I have to make a tape because I have to go through my second class. All right, everybody. So this is William Borden Jr., Bill Borden Jr. And so we're actually at about halfway point of the semester now. Yay. And I've already graded some of your papers for the smoking reactions assignments. So you've done well on that so far, what I've seen. But now we're actually going to, like I said, we're going to be delving more into the reporting end of things. And I'd like to start that off with having, it's the newfangled way of having a guest speaker at 8:30 in the morning, right? It's Bill Borden. He's been a guest speaker of mine for a very long time. He's been very generous with his time. And he's worked in journalism. I should be honest with you. This is Nepo. Okay, he's a Nepo baby. We've been friends in diapers. Okay, so joke. Anyway, but this guy's been a very successful journalist. So what we're going to talk about today, actually, essentially, is public relations and business writing in particular, because those essentially are two areas of journalism that have actually, well, you could argue this, I guess, right, Bill? But
Yeah.
where there's been actually some like a steady growth, I would say. Yes, there's been cutbacks in PR and something like that, but these are two career options for you to consider if you actually do think about going in journalism. And a lot of people, in my classes actually don't go into journalism now. That's fine. So Bill has actually worked in these fields for a very long time. He worked for Reuters, which is one of the largest business news agencies in the world. And he also worked for various PR agencies. And now he works with me at AM Best. So, which is essentially his business journalism. And the thing about business journalism is that it's probably, like I said, there's growth, but it's probably the most basic way to learn how to like really write and report. When you think about it, like what's like a typical business story report about? Stocks, very good, yeah. And what does stocks involve? Money, right? Money, economy, all that stuff. Okay, so it's so you have to do a little bit of digging sometimes, and we're going to talk about digging and how to get that information and what's behind the numbers and stuff like that. But first, I'd like you to actually, it's good, it's important for you to actually meet people who are in the field and have actually succeeded in it. Bill, like I said, worked for Reuters, one of the largest news agencies in the world, and he worked for various PR agencies. Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself that I haven't already told you? Who are you anyway?
Oh, okay.
What are you all about?
Tom and I went to the same elementary school together, or I should say, Professor Davis and I went to the same elementary school and high school, and we both edited the high school newspaper as seniors, and then we went our separate ways. Tom went to Rutgers. I went to what is now known as the College of New Jersey. Back when I was there, it was Trenton State College. And then let's see. We both worked at our respective college newspapers. At Trenton State College, I worked at a weekly called The Signal. We published every Tuesday, so my Monday nights were usually spent putting together the college newspaper. I was a production manager, a news editor, and a sports editor while I was there. I also obtained internships at the Trenton Times and the Asbury Park Press. A bit of advice to all of you: if you have any interest in going into the writing field, journalism, get your clips while you're in college. There's no better way to go into a job interview than to have a portfolio of published work.
It's funny you say that, Bill, because I mean, I love my son and everything, but he now he wants to go into journalism, and he just graduated college, and like the whole time he was in Boston, I was like, "Look for the newspaper." It's not like actually working for the newspaper is actually you don't have to be in journalism to go work for a newspaper. It's actually good to get some sort of portfolio. you know? I mean, in fact, you can work for Patch for nothing. I mean, nobody likes that, but that's probably the numero uno if you want to get like some sort of a job, maybe soon after college, something like that, is have some sort of portfolio about it.
Yeah,
So,
and it's really, really an easy time to do it. I mean, your college newspaper always needs the help. They'll, sometimes you have to get past the clickiness to get assignments.
yeah.
But usually they'll give you easy assignments at first just to see if you could write well. Um,
And my
one,
niece, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Bill, again, I'm sorry. My niece, by the way, was a microbiology major at RIT, and she was like the editor of the newspaper. So, and now she works at Rutgers as a microbiologist. How about
oh, very cool.
that?
No, and I think, I think it's important to get a broad range of experience. In some ways, I think sociology would be as good of a major to lead you into a career in journalism because that gives you some idea of looking at bigger picture issues or themes or trends that you see in the industry. Um, but I think what's most paramount is writing well, writing clearly, writing accurately. Speed should be the last priority. You want to get it right because you can't be any worse than wrong when you're writing. If you get it first and you get it wrong, you're just completely undercutting yourself and damaging your credibility. So it's really important that you get it right. So accuracy is paramount. One of the key elements also is when you're doing any sort of reporting, you need to attribute who you're getting your information from. That's the first question that any reader or editor is going to have is who says this? Who is saying this, and it's really a key element in financial reporting, political reporting. Um, it basically having your sources lined up and making clear who is saying what, and that also gives your reader a sense of, is there a point of view that this source, why is this source telling the paper this? Um, so you'll probably have additional lessons later on when you're talking about how to attribute facts. Some people might have a vested interest in saying, I'll give this to you on background, and that means they want to inform you, but don't attribute the details to that particular source. And they're just kind of leading you in a way to go verify it on your own by additional sources. Um, so that's a very, that's a much deeper discussion when you're talking about sources and not negotiating how to attribute particular details. Um,
When you do that, Bill, it's like what is that? When you say he said, she said, they said, what does that do? What does that give the story? It gives it.
well, yeah, you want to be fair when you're reporting.
Right.
You don't want to. You always want to give people an opportunity to respond to negative details. I mean, even if you're under a tight deadline, you should at least pick up the phone and make a call to see if you could get somebody on the line. And if a story is particularly inflammatory, you might want to give them a bit of leeway rather than, like, hey, you got 3 minutes to tell me your response to this. It's especially if it's very, very damaging. When we were when I was at Reuters, one of the things that we had to be careful about was if there were bankruptcy rumors about a company, um, because once you put it out there that there's rumors of a bankruptcy, all of a sudden creditors and suppliers get very nervous because they might not get their money back and they might like withhold. Let's put it this way, you could be that story that says, oh, this company's on the verge of bankruptcy. That might be the tipping point that pushes them into bankruptcy and essentially could cause undue problems. So I think you want to be fair when you're reporting. Um,
So
And I
Bill,
think that,
how did you start out? Would you,
oh, well, yeah, I mean, going to Reuters was not my first job by any stretch. I mean, I had my internships when I was in college, and then I had trouble finding a job getting at a newspaper right out of school, even though I had these clips. It took me about a year to find work. So I was working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, but I still wanted to write. Um, Sold insurance for a while, still trying to get my foot in the door at a newspaper. Eventually, I worked at the Ocean County Observer and then the Times Beacon newspapers, uh, working at a weekly. And at that weekly, I covered everything from town hall, school boards, police, feature stories, uh, community events. I mean, it was really a good starting ground to get a lot of broad exposure and a lot of writing done. I was responsible for filling 4 broadsheet pages, which is no easy feat every week. So you kind of wrote longer than you might otherwise would, especially when you're covering town meetings. Um, what some papers would do is, is like, oh yeah, give me 500 words on this story. You might go as long as 1,000 words, because you just need to fill the space. Um, it really depended on what sort of news hole you have, because you're putting the copy around the ads at the newspaper. Since everything's gone digital, you do have a bit more leeway when it comes to story length, but I think there's also a general sense that you don't want to write too long because most people are reading the news on their phones. You want to keep it to maybe, unless it's really compelling, 1,000 words is tops for a pretty significant story. I mean, you might go longer if it's like a huge feature that has, significance, or uh, the the subject matter is really, really compelling. I don't think most town meetings make that bar. So you should keep your reader in mind when you're writing these articles. And
that's like the most basic level, right? Like the town meeting is, we're going to be doing that later in the semester, by the way.
yeah,
That kind of covers, because town meetings, he's referring to like council meetings, local school board meetings, things like that. That's like your most basic. That's like one of the first things you do if you ever were to work in a newspaper or news field, is probably do something like that. And there's a need for that, because they've been cutting, a lot of the places have been cutting back on that kind of coverage, and you want to know if like people are raising taxes in town, or if your town like Eagleswood Township is lacking sewers, and the septic is backing up in the backyard. I won an award for a story on that.
yeah. Well, Eagleswood. I don't know how many
Here,
people are
Long Beach Island, if you guys know, who's been to Long Beach Island? Anybody? No? Yeah, it's on the other side. Don't worry, you can swim.
yeah.
It's on the other
It,
side of the bay.
if you go south of Route 72 in that section of Ocean County, you hear a lot of banjos.
Yeah. So anyway, um, trying to think what else here. So yeah, actually, but Bill, you love journalism.
I do. It's
You
fun,
used to read newspaper. Your mama used to tell me see, I saw this is nepotism right here. I'm sorry. Your mom used to tell me about how you used to read the newspaper when you walked down the street, North Stream Parkway, in Point Pleasant Borough.
Yeah. Well, I was so always.
I used to read in the back seat of my mama's car myself. I used to read the sports section. And
Yeah.
anyway, but you had a baby when you were like 25, 26, something like that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
you were like hell bent on like succeeding in this field, even though you were like, it wasn't a lot of money, but you enjoyed it. And unlike a lot of people actually have switched from something like the sciences or something like that to this, because they just want to do something they want to enjoy. Is that how you felt, Bill?
Yeah. I think so. And one of the things that I found was, you know, I, I I enjoyed covering local news, and when I became a dad at 25, I was looking to move on to a bigger publisher. I mean, I didn't expect to go right to Reuters from a weekly newspaper, but Reuters basically gave me a solid middle class job rather than a job where you're making $310 a week and kind of struggling to get your bills paid. Um, but
I don't mean to keep interrupting, I'm sorry. But this is all praise. Bill is a genius. Like a
no,
right now. Yeah, he is. Do you ever hear of Ayn Rand? He reads Ayn Rand in like what, 2 hours or something like that?
no, hell no. That's
Well,
not
like a day and a half, right?
no. Those books were 900 pages. They were some heavy duty reading, and looking back, it's a bit of a slog, quite frankly.
Yeah, but I don't even want to. I read like a first sentence and I'm like, no. And then I pull out a comic book or something from Charles Schultz. But
No,
but
my most
but he to give yourself some credit. You went into that job. They liked you and they took you and you succeeded in it. I mean, and you made it was a pretty big leap, but you were qualified to do it, and that happens. I mean, it's he went from a weekly newspaper to this major news agency, Reuters, because of his smarts, and then he succeeded at it. And he you basically took like any job they offered you when you went to Reuters, right? I mean, like whether it was
well
overnight.
the equities, yeah, the equities desk was just I mean, just it's the very definition of a news mill. Basically, we would have PR Newswire feeding us the news, and it would be just every like if you're basically writing financial news for stock traders, and they depend on speed and accuracy more than anybody. Um, the idea is that if your company is has shares that are traded on the marketplace, one of the obligations is for those companies to disclose how much money they're making every quarter, disclose news that might influence the direction of a stock price, good or bad. They can't hide the news, although some companies have tried to release news at dodgy times, hoping that it would be ignored. But I think one of the things that you find out about markets is that they do react when things come out. One of the dodgiest d disclosures that I've seen was when a company put out a profit warning on, like in the evening of July 3rd, hoping that the July 4th holiday would kind of dwarf the news. And
What do they call that,
next,
Bill?
the next trading day, well, it's, just,
News dump.
yeah, news dump. You'll find a lot of bankruptcies get declared at at 5 o'clock on a Friday, hoping that it only appears in the Saturday edition of the paper rather than the Sunday edition.
We
So
see
it's,
this stuff in the presidential campaign too. We see
oh,
this.
absolutely. No, nobody, I think, you know, and I guess one of the things that you do, I mean, I'm sure some of you want to go into PR, some of you want to go into journalism. I mean, if you go into neither, learning how to write well is just really important for your career, no matter what you do. Whether you want to go into law, academia, marketing, or just being a manager somewhere, you have to be able to write well to share your thoughts and help sell your thoughts to investors, your managers, your bosses, your colleagues, your fellow employees who may report to you at some point. Um, I also, if you do want to go into any sort of management field, I also highly recommend developing presentation skills. Um, Being able to speak in front of a crowd and articulate a plan is a crucial skill for leadership. I can't stress it enough because I think um, just putting up a bunch of slides and talking, regurgitating what you see on a slide doesn't really do much as far as presentation skills. I think you need to be able to go up and here's your use those slides. If you're going to be using the slides, what you want to do is talk to the slides, not just regurgitate the slides. So that's those slides are only tools to keep you on track if you're presenting before an audience, and just don't use them as a complete crutch and bore your audience. So that's a little bit of a sidetrack there. But in terms of going into well, I mean, I was at Reuters for 12 years. I'll just go back to that. I worked at the equities desk. I covered retailing. It was fun for a bit. I also moved into the field of healthcare because I got tired of retailing. I think one of the things that you would help you in your career is to be willing to learn what other people don't want to learn. Hard subjects are always good. Science, economics, technology, um, I think will give you a much more stable place in the job front rather than focusing on writing about pop culture because I don't, it's very hard to break through doing that because it's kind of seen as light material. Um,
But you cover the Versace family.
I did. Like I said, I moved on after a few years of covering retailer, but I mean there are fun moments. I after Gianni Versace was murdered in front of his home in I think it was Miami Beach. He was down in Miami, but I don't know if it was Miami Beach, but it was in one of the
Yeah,
most affluent
the Miami
neighborhoods
Beach,
in
yeah.
the city. He was murdered by a man. I think it was 1996. But his family had to show that the business was still viable, even though Gianni was the guiding creative force of this business.
Fashion.
So, yeah, so his family invited a bunch of reporters over, and it was quite a shows you really how the other half lives because he had this mansion down in Miami, but he had a townhouse on the Upper East Side that was barely a stone's throw away from Central Park. Um, and I met Donatella Versace. I met his brother Santo, and they kind of did this meet and greet with reporters to let them know that the business is still going on. Uh, I ended up coming away with this story. The brother was talking about actually taking the company public. It never came to be because, I mean, when you do take your company public and sell shares to outside investors, you kind of have to like do a lot of disclosures. And, I think family businesses, I mean, it does help with bringing in new capital, but if you're essentially bringing in enough capital and keeping the family happy, I mean, why do you want to open the doors to having other people tending to your business? I mean, you'll see it in the technology world where, you know, uh, I mean, here's an example. Mark Zuckerberg basically took Facebook public close to 20 years ago. I mean, at some point he needed to, bring in additional capital because he had other outside investors that were looking to cash out. And that's the way the venture capital business works. You pitch your company to them, they come in, they fund it, but at some point they want an exit so they could go and invest in the new next big thing. And what happens is those successes um, cover a lot of failed investments at venture capital firms. So it's one of those things that, they know what they want to do. They know what their holding period is for companies. So they don't want to be sitting on uh, they don't want to when a company's public, the fastest growth is typically behind it. So they want out and they want to go in and put their money elsewhere. So that's just one of those things that you have to be mindful of when you
Hey,
bring
Bill,
in.
I forgot that there's a 45-minute limit on the video. Do you mind signing out and signing back in again?
Oh, sure. Yeah, not a
Okay.
problem.
Just give me a
Okay.
second.
All
I
right.
don't pay for Zoom, I'm cheap.
Okay.
See you in a bit.
All right. See you in a few.
Sorry.